I moved to Israel on my own in at the end of 1973 to be a volunteer after the Yom Kippur War,
Okay.
and lived on a kibbutz. And I am Jewish, and I didn't plan on staying. I was thought I'd be there for 6 months, and I was just taken by my experience when I was there and decided to stay. And then I was conscripted into the Army, and I served as a paratrooper. And in 1980, I came back to the United States. The Holocaust literature scholar at Kansas State University at the time, who's passed away now, she was a distinguished professor, Lillian Kramer, knew me and asked me if I wanted to write a couple articles for her encyclopedia about Israeli authors, because she knew I knew one of the authors. And actually, it started out, I just do that author, and she then suggested I do another one, someone I didn't know. After those were published, she retired, but I was asked to take over the Holocaust literature course, which I did kind of a trial run as an honors English section in 2004. And then in 2005, I took over the Holocaust literature course. And then for a while, it was being offered once a year. Now we teach it every year and a half to 2 years. I immerse myself in the literature, but also the history, because I can't divorce the literature from the history. I want to know what made this author write this thing. And
given that you've been teaching this course for so long and have adopted this course sort of as an honorarium to someone who you obviously had a significant connection with, is this last semester sort of a greatest books version of Holocaust literature? Or?
I don't know that I'm doing a greatest books version of it. They're obviously all primary texts. I hope it's my greatest version of the class. I will have them more invested in this semester's teaching of it than I have had in the past, although I've always felt like this course was the most demanding course for me to teach in terms of preparation. I really try to include a variety with that limitation, that it have that strong connection to history that's almost a prima facie connection, that these are witnesses who were there as opposed to witnesses through the imagination.
You have several diaries. What other primary texts are you using?
Well, I use a graphic novel called by Art Spiegelman. It's called The Complete Mouse, but it's really, he wrote it as two separate works, Mouse 1 and Mouse 2. I have to say that this was an eye-opening experience for me, because for years I avoided looking at it, because when people told me it was graphic, I thought, you can't make a comic book about the Holocaust. And then when I was finally persuaded, well, I really do need to know something about it. And I read it, and I was just floored by how good it was. And it was it's not a comic book at all. It's an amazing work. Teach Elie Wiesel's Night, which is taught in the high schools too. I'm hoping, it used to have a strong draw for education students, because they teach the book, and I retain it and continue to teach night because I can offer insights into it that I'm sure that a lot of high school teachers aren't aware of, although I've heard back from a number of high school teachers over the years that they've kept their notes from my class and found them very helpful. So that's the reward you get for teaching. there's a play I teach called Ghetto by Joshua Sobel. He is an Israeli, a little bit older than me. I think maybe 10 years older, actually. But I lived on a kibbutz, and he lived on a kibbutz about 3 miles from mine. But he's not a Holocaust survivor, but he based his play on extensively interviewing one of the survivors of the Vilna ghetto, and which was famous for establishing a theater company in the midst of all that was going on. And this was one of the actors in the theater company. And he also discovered hidden away a number of lyrics for songs that were performed by that theater company, and it was a way of, registering their protest to what was happening in front of the Nazis without the SS actually understanding what the songs were about and the skits were about. So it's an effort to document that. There's a novel by a well-known writer, Aaron Appelfeld, called Silly, which is a name for a girl, and in Yiddish and Hebrew both, it means my shadow. It's actually based on his experiences to a large extent, moving through the countryside and staying with different people and hiding. I teach some poetry, a poem by Abraham Sutzkever, who was involved in the Vilna ghetto, and particularly with the partisan movement there. Had some powerful poems, and Paul Celan's poetry. Basically, I organized the course based on works about the experience in the different ghettos. And then I look at some stories about actions that took place, as well as Appelfeld's story about hiding in the countryside. And finally, I end with before the poetry section, with works that concern Auschwitz. Appelfeld came from the same place, or the same place where my grandfather came from, and actually knew my grandfather's family. My grandfather came just after the First World War, but he left family behind. And one of our family members managed to get in contact with Appelfeld, which wasn't easy because he's kind of the J.D. Salinger of Israel. He's an absolute recluse, but he finally opened up to one of my relatives and said, yes, some of your family's still there. I hope, and I think in 2022, it has a little more relevance because of what's happening in Ukraine. I taught honors English, and my honors English looks at some of the material I use in this course, but it looks at a lot of other material as well. I had a sense in teaching the honors English when we were looking at some of the same places that were in the news, Babin Yar and so forth, that all of a sudden this seemed more real to them. I really want them and trust that if they read the literature closely, it will have meaning. So I do have quizzes over the reading. These are short comprehension quizzes. And I will stress this to anyone who's interested, and they should know this about my approach to teaching literature. I think the finest TVAL comment I ever received many, many years ago, written on the back, was, I learned to read more slowly. To encourage that, I try to keep the reading portions smaller than the kinds of reading portions I received in college that really pushed you to try to read as fast as you could, and you'd miss so much. I have a couple what I call close reading workshops, and basically it has some short answer questions that you answer the first time through. Then you read the work again, answer some different questions, and then there's a final opportunity for a longer discussion, 2, 3, or 4 paragraphs, and it depends on the work. So I have 2 of those, and for answering the short answer questions, the students will work in groups, but writing the longer discussion, they do that on their own. And then I have the 2 midterm exams and a final exam.
I really do appreciate you taking time to talk with me today.